Welcome back to the Many Toys of, the show in which we go over the action figure history of various Transformers characters. And this time around, I want to talk about the ultimate Decepticon weapon, Predaking. Before we begin, a big thank you to Aneurysm, Voidcraft Gaming, Arc Collects, D-Lee4915, The Bulbasaur Guy, and an especially big thank you to Dragon Scorpion 4008 and Leia 1997X. Dragon Scorpion and Leia have been requesting Predaking for months now, and I want to thank each and every one of you for giving me a reason to look at the ultimate hunter. For anyone unaware, Predaking is the combined form of the 5 Predacons in G1, and he is outright stated in canon to be the most powerful of all combiners. Not only is he the strongest and the most durable, but he's also the smartest of all the combiners, due to the fact that the Predacons are all on the same page. Not only do the 4 components all totally defer to Razorclaw as their lead hunter, but it's that shared love of the hunt and the challenge that allows Predaking to be intelligent, sane, and also able to strategize in his own right. Whereas previous combiners, like Devastator, Bruticus, and Menasor, all had their own personal hangups that made them more dangerous to the Decepticons than the Autobots sometimes, Galvatron always rest assured knowing that Predaking would not be stopped, could not be stopped, and the only weapon the Autobots could use to even hold back this Goliath was Skylinks. Predaking, in some ways, is the ultimate iteration as to what combiners could be. The perfect merging of 5 bots, 5 minds, 5 bodies, all of their respective talents and abilities formed into one perfect being. And it helps that he looks amazing on top of that. I also need to make this point clear right now. Predaking is the second combiner we've ever looked at on the Many Toys of. Just like Devastator before him, I will not be discussing individual components. So if you want to learn more about a character like, say, Razorclaw or Dive Bomb, we're going to cover them and all their toys in their own episodes. Today, I am only talking about the combined forms, or individual robots that bear the name Predaking, though we'll get to that when we start getting closer to Prime. Predaking's original toy came out in 1986. Something that I find so interesting is that just like in fiction, it feels like Predaking's toy is the culmination of all the lessons learned from designing the other combiners. He is like the Scramble City combiners, except his limbs can't switch around. Just like Devastator, he has a planned formation, and that means that the overall body is a lot sharper. However, the components still have the better unique transformations, like the Scramble City bots did. And Predaking overall has great proportions for a G1 combiner. Even though to my modern eye I could say that his torso is a little bit weedy, when you compare him with his contemporaries, he's a very impressive looking bot. It helps that the shared color scheme, Dive Bomb's wings, and that beautiful, beautiful head sculpt really make Predaking feel like his own unique entity. I like the Scramble City bots, but you can tell that they're hodgepodge. They're almost like Frankenstein creations. Meanwhile, Predaking and Devastator, it feels like this is supposed to be what you're doing with them. This is a character in its own right. Predaking is not just a gimmick that Razorclaw and his 4 best buds can do. This is one of the final weapons that the Decepticons would throw at the Autobots. That same year, you'd be able to get a gift set of the Predacons only in Japan. In 1987, Predaking was a part of the Forms Robo line. These were essentially oversized decoy figures, and it was the way to get the Citybots and the Combiners in there. Now, Predaking skipped out on the Beast era, but I do want to point this out because it feels prudent. The Predacons are named for the G1 Predacons. And yes, obviously, in real life it's because they had the trademark, but within the fiction, the original Predacons were actually the G1 Predacons. Razorclaw and Dive Bomb established that faction in the wake of the destruction of the Decepticons. So when you see Beast Wars Megatron, Black Arachnia, Tarantulas, Pterosaur, Waspinator, Scorponok, any of them, they are bearing the name, the badge, and the legacy of this original fivesome of Decepticons. Even still, despite that lore importance, there was no Predaking in the Beast era. It took until 2004 for us to get our second Predaking, and here he was reissued in Japanese markets. What's really fascinating is that this Predaking is actually more durable than the original. In 2006, you would finally have an option for a pocket-scale Predaking in the Titanium series. This was a 3-inch tall robot master, a die-cast figure with limited articulation, but I do think that they captured Predaking's design very well. In 2009, Predaking would only get tinier, being released in Robot Heroes alongside Ricochet. Come 2010, Predaking would be reissued in the Welcome to Transformers 2010 Takara Tomy line. This is actually a very different Predaking, all things considered. Yes, it's still the G1 mold, but there's a lot more die-cast plastic. There's a lot more paint. It looks a lot more regal, whereas before we had the more cartoonish orange, this is now a much sleeker, glossier coat with more paint and metallics thrown in. Now, I know that we're pretty early into this many toys of, but you should know that most of Predaking's toy history is actually pretty back-heavy. I want to take a pause right here, right now, to talk about some of the third-party options. With Predaking being such a striking design, and one that fans can never get enough of, you better believe that he's had some marquee figures in the third-party realm. The first Predaking I remember learning about, not just as a third-party fan, but as a Transformers fan in general, was the Mastermind Creations Feral Rex. This was one of the first true breakout hits of Mastermind Creations. And I want to point this out. Up until this point, the only combiners we really had in third party were TFC, and they were fine for what they were, but nowhere near the level of quality of Hasbro and Takara Tomy plastic. Mastermind Creations took Feral Rex and gave us an incredibly durable set of bots, and moreover, they were properly in-scaled. When they transformed, Feral Rex was massive and would look great with a Chug collection. The colors were great, the articulation was perfect. There is a reason as to why I'm constantly praising Mastermind Creations. It's because in their grand history of toy design, they've always pushed the bar for third party, and more often than not, set the new standard. Feral Rex became the golden ring of third party combiners for years to come. And I would argue that within this scale of Chug, which is to say Generations, Classics, Henkei, Universe, within this aesthetic, no one has ever touched Feral Rex. Here's the odd thing though. Remember how I said TFC had previously been the standard bearers? I didn't know until I started researching this video that they had done their own Predaking. And there's a reason as to why I had never heard that. This Predaking is incredibly rough. Even though I will always give my just due to TFC Hercules, how important that Devastator was to third party, I'm never going to mince words. TFC's quality only went down and down and down in the releases that came after their Devastator, and unfortunately it looks as though Predaking was very similar. The design is somewhat sloppy, all the robot modes are pretty bloated, and it's known to have a number of points of breakage. Still an interesting bot, but not an important one, nor a very durable one. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Unique Toys also did a Predaking. The only combiner I think of when I think of Unique Toys is their Abominus. They had one of my favorite third-party releases ever with Troll, their version of Blot. And even though the other Terracons never were able to match up to his standard, their Abominus overall was still pretty solid. And that's how I refer to their Predaking. It's solid. Fine. Perfectly acceptable. Speaking of Kang, they've given us our only Masterpiece scale Predaking as of yet. And Kang is interesting. They went out of their way to put their own aesthetic into Predaking. And I know it was rather divisive. A lot of people hate that there's a new sixth member that kind of brings Optimus Primal to mind. But I would honestly still say that Predaking is really solid. I like the experimentation. and it made a beautiful, beautiful robot. It might not be your perfect G1 masterpiece, but he would look perfectly at home on an IDW shelf or really any shelf. I think that this Predaking kind of transcends Transformers. You could pair him up with Star Wars or Star Trek, and anything that has that type of sci-fi bend, this Predaking looks like it could blend in decently well. It's just a good toy overall. And what I think is really interesting is Kang Toys is doing something I've never seen any other third-party company do. Right now, they're still working on their Volcanicus set, but while they were releasing their Predaking and during their Volcanicus, they're actually doing different versions of these designs at different scales. So, at this moment, you could get a Legend Scale Kang Predaking, a Masterpiece Scale one, a Voyager Scaled one. I've never seen a company, I don't want to say cannibalize, but use their designs so quickly and with so little hesitation. Going from very real market talk to something that's just cute, look at this little super deformed Predaking. I love him so much. I think he's absolutely adorable. And that brings an end to our third-party roundup. As I said, Predaking's had good love in third-party. It feels like every time he gets a release, it is an event. More so than characters like Menasor or Bruticus or even Devastator. Yes, there's less of him, but each one is remarkable in their own way. Swimming back to the official waters in 2013, Creo Predaking would have hit the scene. This is the end result of taking the 4 Creon microchangers of the Predacons and building up a very strange lanky boy. You could also get the Platinum Edition Thrilling 30 Predaking. This is a reissue of the G1 Predaking, and the paint is similar to the 2010 Japanese release, just a little bit more pulled back. Even with a good G1 reissue, I don't think there's much argument that the reason 2013 was so important to Predaking is because his name was reused for a fan-favorite character in Transformers Prime. In the 3rd season, Shockwave started making clones of Predacons, ancient apex predators that once roamed Cybertron. Using their CNA, he made abominations of science that were supposed to destroy the Autobots. But imagine Shockwave's surprise when the first one he made started talking. For the first half of Season 3, Predaking seemed to just be a silent predator, but we slowly and surely started to see signs of intelligence, the way that he would eavesdrop on people, his sheer hatred and resentment of Starscream, the fact that he seemed to have some ability to rationalize his situation. But come the episode in which they were going to Shockwave's lab, Predaking transforms and addresses the fact that he feels he should be able to lead this new species. Fearing that Predaking would betray him, Megatron, Shockwave, and Starscream ultimately destroyed all of Predaking's brethren before they even had a chance to be birthed, and that led to Predaking going rogue. Not that it went all that well for him. Even though he was the ultimate Autobot hunter, there was absolutely no way that he could ever combat a proper gladiator of Kaon.
You should have heeded my advice and faced me as a beast.
The first toy of Predaking you'd be able to get would have been the Cyberverse Commander Predaking. For a Scout class sized Predaking, he's really nice. The Dragon mode's a little bit strange proportions, I don't like his stubby legs, but in Robot mode they've captured the design so well, he looks gorgeous, and the colors serve the figure well as well. You could get this same mold in the Optimus Prime vs. Predaking 2-pack. I want you to look at this purple and red deco. This Predaking is actually supposed to homage the 2001 Robots in Disguise Megatron, and even though I don't think it does that very well, these colors do look really nice, and I love it on this mold. There was a translucent version that came with the SDCC Shockwave's Lab set, and I'll be honest, that thing looks like it's going to snap if I breathe on it. The same toy, done entirely in gold, would have been released at CybertronCon that year. The Voyager Predaking is really odd. He's so inaccurate to the show. In Beast Mode, he has 3 heads, making him look more like Scourge from Cybertron or maybe Center Twin from the Terracons. When he transforms, even in Robot Mode, his wings are way too low, he's a lanky boy. He looks good. That's the oddest thing of all, is that this Predaking is a very nice presenting figure. If you were to just tell me that this is a toy line exclusive character, I would roll with it so heavily. But the fact that it's supposed to be Predaking, it's just off, I'm afraid. That might be the reason as to why I prefer the Cryofire Predaking. This is the Voyager Predaking done in a more Cryotech-inspired color scheme, and because it's not supposed to look like the show, I can appreciate the mold more. This is a great-looking demonic Predacon. Just don't tell me that it's Predaking. At this point, we've had a very good tiny Predaking, and a Predaking that's a good toy, but not a good representation of him. Maybe that's why the Ultimate Class Beastfire Predaking seems to resonate so much with people. This was the largest of all the Predakings, with a 21-inch wingspan, and in both Robot Mode and Beast Mode, it is the most accurate to the cartoon. This is an absolutely colossal Predaking, about the same size as the Prime Weaponizers, and as a result, he scales very well with Deluxes and especially Cyberverse figures. If you want a Predaking that towers over Ultra Magnus and Shockwave the way he does in the cartoon, grab this one and keep him in Dragon Mode. Predaking would keep up his momentum in 2014, but before we get into the proper releases, I want to talk about a very odd re-release. There was a minor redeco of the Beast Hunters Voyager Predaking put in a 2-pack alongside Optimus Prime. The reason this Predaking is strange is because he's using the colors of his prototype toy, right down to having the prototype Predacon insignia, and not the finalized one you'd see on every other toy in the Beast Hunters range. Moreover, this 2-pack was only released in Portugal, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Brazil. A far simpler Predaking, both in terms of how it was released and what it was as a toy, was the Construct Bots Predaking, just another one of Hasbro's many attempts to do LEGO Transformers, this time Bionicle flavored. Speaking of a Hasbro LEGO knockoff, you could get the custom Creon Predaking. This would have just been a Creon that had some parts that you could switch around. The most interesting of all Predakings from Prime, for me, would have been the Voyager class Predaking released this year. This is an upsized Cyberverse Commander class Predaking given a better deco, and despite being a Voyager class, he towers over most Leader class figures with a sword that's as big as he is. At the very tail end of Prime, Hasbro had the idea of upscaling a lot of the better Legion class figures. And even though some of those were pretty bad, like Bumblebee and Sideswipe, a few of them, like Cutthroat, really showed the promise of the idea. Cyberverse was such a beautifully engineered scale that if you turn them into the Voyagers and the Deluxes, it could have been a breath of fresh air for Prime. And this Predaking specifically, I think is the best Predaking of the entire Prime toy line. The most accurate? No. But then again, none of them have been accurate. This is the best looking, the best playing, the best articulated, and in my opinion, the best depicted version of this character. After Prime, Predaking would take a few years off before popping back up in 2017. His Welcome to Transformers 2010 figure was reissued in Takara Tomy markets. In 2018, G1 Predaking would finally reclaim his dominance as one of the best combiners in Transformers, when he was released in the Power of the Primes Titan class slot. This is a beautiful, beautiful robot. Yes, the individual Predacons are somewhat hampered by the combination gimmick, but nowhere near as much as the Combiner Wars Constructicons. All of them are still really good figures, and they are accurate to their G1 proportions. You just have to deal with the fact that in G1 there was a very chunky tiger and lion and bird alongside that rhino and bull. Alongside that, the Predaking Combined mode is just beautiful, incredibly well articulated, and pitch perfect to what we saw in the cartoon. I would honestly call this toy a peer and equal to the Mastermind Creations Feral Rex, and I'd go so far as to say that if you weren't too big on Kang and their version of Predaking, this Predaking would probably do you just as well. far more G1 accurate, and still a wonderful toy to boot. 2021 would give us our most unique Predaking ever, that being the Dinobot Adventures Predaking. This is a remold of Heatwave the Firebot in his Rescan series Dragon mode, and overall I think he's fine. It's definitely the most, let's say, friendly looking Predaking. That brings us to 2025, our current year, and just above the horizon is a truly impressive looking bot. The Adams Machina Predaking is going to be one of the most ambitious combiners ever put out by Takara Tomy. Not quite Masterpiece, not quite Generations. It's a standalone piece. It's supposed to be them flexing their collective engineering brilliance to make their version of the best G1 combiner. And that's it. As a character, I think Predaking is really fascinating. I can't think of many Transformers characters that haven't been in many continuities, but the continuities that they have been in have given us two almost equally iconic versions of the character. When I say Predaking, depending on the fan I'm talking to, they will either think of the noble warrior from Prime or the ultimate combiner from G1, and they're both solid Predakings. And they do have similarities, the idea of being the ultimate hunter, the idea of being the apex predator, the idea of being the culmination of design and science and engineering. Predaking, at the end of the day, is a name that's meant to usher respect. You have to pay attention to Predaking, or else Predaking very well might tear into you next. Now, is Predaking better as a combiner or as a dragon? I don't really have an opinion on that. I like both of them about equally. Neither one of them are my favorites, but I'm always happy to see them pop up in fiction or get new toys. And as I said, I'm very excited to track down a Prime Predaking and eventually get that Adams Machina G1 Predaking. Much like G1 Red Alert and Armada Red Alert, I'm happy with either version of the character showing up. I think both of them have a unique niche to fill within this franchise, and I don't see a reason as to why we can't just have two Predakings running around. In lore, maybe you could even say that Predaking, the dragon, was the original Predaking, and the combiner was named after him. I'm fine with that headcanon, and it allows me to justify having two really strong characters and strong designs to stick around in this franchise that needs as many unique bots as we can possibly get. But guys, I'll ask you, which was your favorite Predaking? And is there a Predaking you're trying to track down right now? I want you to know. I hope that the next episode out will be the many toys of Starscream, but just due to how big that video will be, I cannot say for sure when I will have it finished. In any case, it will be coming out in July. Alongside that, guys, I'm on Patreon now. For $1, you'd be able to access my Discord server Moonbase 1. For $5, you can watch videos early and download videos directly from me. And for $10, not only can you make direct video requests, but you will be made a producer and show up at the end of every single video I make from now on. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and we'll have to see what we get up to next time.